What's up everybody, Matt Moran here for another car review. This is of course the 2001 Ford Mustang Bullitt. Huge thanks to South Park Mitsubishi for providing me with this pristine Bullitt to review for you guys today. So about the 2001 Bullitt, well this one in particular is black, which was one of the options back in 2001 in addition to the dark Highland green and actually true blue, which is the rarest of the three colors. But here in black, you know, it still looks very mean, very low-key in a lot of ways. And like I said, this one is really pristine because this one only has about 7,800 miles on it. So I mean, less than 8,000 miles. So I mean, everything is just pristine on this car. So it was just a perfect one to review. So anyway, first thing up front here. Now you'll notice it's not quite as faithful to the movie car as the 08 and the 19s are. You know, you still have a pony emblem there in the grille. You have this hood scoop up on the hood, which isn't functional, and also again, you know, is a little more shouty than what you would see on something like the movie car. And then coming down to the sides here, you do have some very faithful torque thrust wheels that are 17 inches here in this application and are the more silver finish, which is pretty much a lot closer to what you saw in the movie car than the black ones you see like on the 19, for example. Coming down to the fenders here, you do still have a GT emblem as well, which again goes against the ethos of the movie car, but you know, was what they felt they needed to do back in 2001. Out back, you have a pretty typical Mustang back end. You have a little Bullitt badge there on the back, and then you also have some stainless steel looking exhaust tips there, which are, you know, part of the unique exhaust system you get here on the 01 Bullitts. This one did have a spoiler added by the owner. These aren't supposed to have a spoiler on the back. They did, you know, retain that feature from the movie car of deleting the spoiler, but this one has one added back on, and unfortunately I think it kind of makes it look a little more ordinary and a little less special than the Bullitts usually look, you know, with that clean deck lid there. But otherwise, you know, it looks pretty good. You know, I especially really like these wheels. You know, they have a larger chrome lip than what you see on the other, you know, newer Bullitts and stuff. So overall, I still think it's just a really cool look.
Whereas the interior of the 2001 Bullitt, well, this is where it's actually a little more faithful, I think, to the movie car in some ways. So anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these very cool, unique bucket seats here in the Bullitt, and they definitely have more aggressive bolstering, but I really love this ribbing you have, which is vertical in orientation, which is actually the same as the 68 vehicles versus, you know, on the newer ones, like my 19, it's a horizontal ribbing instead, which also, you know, pays homage. It's a similar theme, just this got it actually correct, which I really appreciate here. But they really hug you in well. I think these are the same seats as the Cobra. They certainly feel that way. They feel better than regular Mustang seats. But anyway, they just are really nice. Obviously, this one, again, everything is so mint in this car, so they just still feel nice and firm and really hug you in nicely. Next, the steering wheel here in the Bullitt, which is basically the same as any other Mustang steering wheel from this era, I believe, which means it's not too sporty. The Mustangs back then, you know, kind of used the same parts bin Ford steering wheel as many others, you know, F-150s and stuff, all I think had a very, very similar steering wheel, if not actually identical. But it is nicely leather wrapped here for the rim at least, which is really, you know, great. It has a good 9-3 grip though, still no 10 and 2 notches, but you know, overall, you know, nothing to really complain about. You know, just a nice simple wheel. It feels pretty good. Next to the gauges though, which I think are one of my favorite parts of the 01 Bullitt interior here. So you know, they are just as small as all the other SN95 gauges. They're all just abnormally small in these. But anyway, I really like the font on this. It's a different unique style here for the Bullitt, which again looks very retro and looks again like the 68 cluster, which I really appreciate. And so, you know, the fonts and everything are just a little more exciting to look at, and overall good gauges. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, it's very simple 90s Ford parts bin stuff here for the most part. You know, they're very basic climate controls. Everything is very cheap plastic, but again, we're talking about a car that's 18 years old at this point. You have to cut it a break. You know, this was par for the course, at least from the Americans back then. So, you know, nothing, you know, that you can really complain about a whole lot. You know, but everything feels pretty solid in this one since it is, you know, so mint. You know, but everything is still cheaper plastic, and you know, just a few buttons though, and very, very simple, you know, traction control off button, very primitive traction control these had when they first started introducing that. And this one also has an aftermarket head unit in it, which does add an auxiliary jack and a USB jack that it otherwise wouldn't have. And thankfully that is a double DIN unit, so you could actually put in one of the modern touchscreen infotainment systems that even has you know, like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto if you really want. It would fit one of those. So it's nicely upgradable, very easy to swap radios if you want, which is a nice feature as well. And then you have this very cool shifter, 5-speed manual here in the 01 Bullitt. Bullets, and has a really cool metal shift knob here, and it's just, you know, this like crooked shifter, which again is actually, you know, what you found in all the old Mustangs, you know, but on the newer ones it's just a traditional little smaller short shifter, and so this is actually really cool to look at, you know, the way it comes up, and it just makes for a unique shifting experience that if you haven't driven older cars you're kind of missing. It's a little tricky, you know, and a little more muscle required, but still very cool. And then you have your two cup holders, and then you have a center armrest, which is barely padded but does have a little bit of give to it. And anyway, you open that up and you have a decent amount of space in there. You'll find another power outlet in there as well, you know, overall for the time this was about average, about the kind of storage space you got. You know, there's a little pocket here on the doors, but not a whole lot of space there either. And it's funny because even the glove box doesn't have enough space in it to actually fit the owner's manual, which is kind of funny. But anyway, you know, like I said, for the time this was about what you got in everything, and so nothing we can really complain about. Two other cool little touches that are unique to the Bullet here is you have metal pedals, which look nice, and you also see a metal tread plate there that has the Bullet logo on it. Again, that's very similar to what you see in the 08s and the 19s as well. So the 01's the one that established a lot of these cues and, you know, kind of decided what we should include from the movie car, you know, what things we should do to make it retro, and I think they really started in a great direction here with this, and that was just continued and improved with the newer versions. Yeah, overall, you know, it's just a really nice simple interior here in these old Bullets. Alright, so start up and go for a drive. The key here for the Bullet is the same as any other Mustang, but again, since this one is so low miles, it is like a brand new key. It's kind of amazing. But of course, this does not have keyless entry or push button start or anything. You just put the key into the slot here, and it roars to life. Alright, so setting off in the 2001 Mustang Bullet. So I think one of the first things you notice, it does have a little bit of a throatier tone. We do have a unique exhaust that was tuned to be more like the movie car. It does flow about 20% better, and I think as part of what makes up the additional little bit of horsepower you get here with the Mustang Bullet. So for the 01s, you know, there was a few changes to the engine, very similar formula to what you get in the newer ones. So the main stuff here still is the same 4.6 liter single overhead cam V8 engine that does 265 horsepower, 5 more than a regular GT, and 305 pound-feet of torque, which is 3 more than a regular GT back then. So very minor improvements. These days everyone's complaining about only 15 more in the 19s. That's big compared to the 5 you got here in this. But it actually gave it some better performance. So it wasn't just about the numbers, you know, so it had a cast aluminum intake manifold with freer flowing throttle bodies that were larger, which helped it to all give you better throttle response, which was one of the really big things these were praised about back in the day. And it actually made it a little bit faster. 0 to 60 time is 5.8 seconds for these, so you know, it's about, I think, 0.2 seconds faster than a regular GT, which was around 6 seconds at the time. And the quarter mile is only 14.3 at 98.9 miles per hour, which is actually a half second faster in a quarter mile than what you would get with a regular GT. So reasonable improvements, you know, for what was a package that I think back then was a very minor upcharge, and it wasn't very expensive. Other things to note though, as I'm just kind of cruising here, not pushing it or anything, but you do notice, so it's a 1-inch lower ride height they actually got on the 01 Bullets, and so everything's a little bit stiffer. The springs are a little stiffer, the struts, also the anti-sway bars are a little bit thicker, and so all that helps to, you know, again, just make it feel a little tighter, you know, a little less sloppy than what you would get with a regular GT of this era, which were a little more floaty, a little more all over the place, and this feels a little more tight and, you know, buttoned down, which actually is really nice. Other things to notice here, the clutch is a little bit heavier than what you find in most modern cars, but it's not too bad. It's not quite as bad as some of the other clutches on some of these SN95s I remember being really, really heavy. This one isn't too bad, but it is still a little heavy and wouldn't be the most fun in traffic, I'll say. But the shifter is nice and notchy. This 5-speed really feels great to use. Other things here to note, throttle response also is another thing that feels great to use. Very direct. Obviously just an old-fashioned, you know, there's no, you know, drive-by-wire or anything. It's just a nice analog throttle and really feels nice and responsive. Brakes definitely have a decent amount of dead travel, and then they actually bite down pretty nicely. So you have larger 13-inch brakes here in the Bullet, and so actually when Road and Track did their testing of the Bullet here, it actually had better braking performance than the comparable Cobra of the day. So, you know, pretty good brakes here, you know, even though, you know, by modern standards, I'm sure they're, you know, not super impressive, but back then they actually held up pretty well. Another thing is visibility is quite good here in the Bullitt. Again, thanks to, these SM95s, you're sitting up a little bit higher. You don't have a very low sitting position, so it's not very sporty in that regard. But you have nice thin A-pillars, so very easy to see around. Pretty large windshield, view out of the sides is great, and view out of the back is also pretty good. So, very easy car to drive in that regard. All right, so let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Wow. Gets up and goes really well. And then you lean on these brakes and they leave a little bit to be desired, personally, compared to, the modern brakes that we're spoiled with these days. But yeah, so I can totally believe those numbers. It definitely feels faster than 265 horsepower. This is a car that if you just looked at the numbers, you'd be very surprised when you actually drove this, just how quick it is. Everything about these older Mustangs was really dramatic, even though, it wasn't that extreme. Again, like I said, the power, it doesn't seem like much on paper, but then even, you're in third gear and you stomp on it, and it, nicely plants you back in your seat and makes it feel, pretty quick and just exciting and fun. You don't have to be going super fast, but if you feel like, you're going faster than you are, that, makes it just as fun. It allows you to really exploit this vehicle because, it doesn't have, like a lot as far as like, the power band. It's a nice, strong power band, from even very low RPMs. You have nice, meaty torque, but, it only goes to like 5,800 RPMs and then it dies off. You don't even hit 6,000 in these. So, very, very low as far as redline and stuff goes. But the low RPMs, like I said, just feel so, just meaty. And so it just really makes you content to stay at 2,500 RPMs and just push it. You have a very sharp throttle response, thanks to those Bullitt improvements here. And all that really helps to contribute to a vehicle that, feels a little more lively than I think it should, which is a great thing. So as we're turning down to a tighter back road here, I'm going to test out the handling a little bit, but this vehicle appears to be wearing its original tires. And considering these tires are about as old as the Fast and Furious movie came out at the same time in 2001, it's not going to inspire the most confidence on my behalf. But here we go. So we have 245 wide tires here, Goodyears, and these were the Eagles, and I'm assuming a sportier Eagle back then. But 245 actually all around, so it's a square setup, which was really cool, since usually it's a staggered setup in a lot of these Mustangs. And 245s, again, for a vehicle of this performance caliber, I think gives it a good amount of grip. I haven't felt the back end wanting to break out, even with traction control off. I just on that 1-2 shift, got a little bit of wheel spin, and that was it. So it feels very manageable. This feels very friendly, controllable. I mean, I'm sure, again, you can hang the tail out and stuff if you really want to, push it and go nuts and drive crazy. But, just it's a really nice cruiser just to kind of push a little bit. And, you do have a little bit of body roll to it. It's not quite as buttoned down as the newer ones or anything, of course. But these are nice and light, so that gives them an edge over the newer ones for sure. This 2001 Bullitt here weighs 3,360 pounds. So that's a good, 500 pounds lighter than my 19. I believe the S197 version was somewhere around the 3,500 mark, maybe a little bit over. And so, this is definitely, I think, the lightest of the Bullitts. And so, it just makes everything a little simpler. You have less weight to throw around. It feels less intimidating because you have less power. And everything about it just feels very friendly. This would be a great starter Bullitt. That's one of the really cool things about these older Bullitts. I mean, this one's pristine, and you can get this one, by the way. It is available at South Park Mitsubishi. If you'd actually like to check it out, the link is in the description below there, and they'd be more than happy to help you out and tell them I sent you. But if you want one with higher miles, a lot of these 01s, pretty close to the end of their lifespan. Lots of high mileage ones and things like that out there. And you can get one of these things. I've seen them, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for pretty nice ones still. And it makes a really good first car, I think. Especially if you want something with that old school American V8 sound, which I don't think ever gets old and sounds great in just about everything. And this one, like I said, a little bit more burly than what you get in a regular GT. You have some nice improvements over a regular GT. And since this is a Bullitt, the chances are it's been nicely treated a little bit more than an average GT might have been. There might be more nice ones to pick from than GTs of this era, which might be more of a tough thing to find. You know, it does not feel fast in the modern sense of the word. I mean, you know, you have EcoBoost Mustangs that run circles around this thing now, and so it's, you know, for the time it was very impressive, but it certainly is dated at this point as far as performance goes. Steering, as I'm going around some corners here too, is really actually nice and precise for the most part. I mean, you know, it isn't the quickest steering rack or anything, but you know, it's wonderfully analog and just feels, again, a little more natural and a little more connected than what you get in modern stuff like my 19, where it has a nice weight to it, but this you feel so much more through the steering wheel, which is really nice, and something that, you know, all these older cars have. That's just a really great feature. One more acceleration. Here we go. Yeah, once you get to those higher RPMs, it really likes to pull a little bit harder, though. You know, I think it's almost, you know, similar to like my 19, where they all have that nicer top end in the Bullets, which is really appreciated. But you know, still by modern standards, this isn't going to be super fast feeling or anything, but it is still fun. And that's really the bottom line here. Is it still is a blast, still putting a smile on my face. It's still a very, very cool car. But yes, a huge thanks once again to South Park Mitsubishi for providing me with this 01 Bullet to review for you guys. Like I said, check out the description below if you want to see more pictures of this very mint 7,800 mile 01 Bullet. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know what you think about the 01s in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.